So I do want to talk about this rumor that's been floating around about this $2,000 per month stimulus plan for Americans. Now, this is a vicious rumor, and I think it plays on people's fears and anxieties that we're in right now. Look, we're all feeling anxious. We're all hoping that we got out of this coronavirus thing, got back to work, reopened our economy, and now we're heading back into lockdown. We're heading back into wearing masks. We're heading back into restaurants being closed down and being told you can't have inside dining. All of it's rolling backwards. It just feels like, oh my gosh, really? In the dog days of summer, we got to be trapped inside right now? And heat was supposed to kill this thing? But I've seen, and I want to call out one particular publication more than any other. And I believe that publication is Forbes. Forbes has been levying a number of articles recently that are really aimed at trying to, I think, play off of people's fears and anxieties. They'll label an article, for instance, like, are $2,000 a month stimulus checks coming back into fashion? Or something like that. Well, first of all, they were never in fashion. It was an idea that was floated by 3 senators in the Senate. That was Senator Bernie Sanders, Senator Kamala Harris, and Ed Markey. There was never any traction among Republicans. There was a little bit, perhaps, on Lindsey Graham and some others who voiced some interest in this. But there was never any traction from Mitch McConnell. And there's no way in the world that President Trump is likely to sign a $2,000 per month check for people making up to $90,000 or $100,000 a year in adjusted gross income. But I've been calling for it. I think absolutely it makes sense in the United States. Canada has done it. Other countries have done it. They've kept citizens, being able to pump money into the economy because they're spending. They know that the next check is coming next month. They can pay their groceries. They can go to the movies. They can, pay for Netflix and other things like that. That keeps the economy burning and churning. But in the United States, we haven't done it. Why would we suddenly decide to do it now? Well, this article points to this OECD article, which is a letter from the 156 economists that sent the letter, an open letter, to Congress and the president a few weeks ago, and I covered it here on the show, urging policymakers to get a recurring monthly payment, direct cash payment, into the hands of the American people. It would help drive consumer spending, it would hasten the recovery, it would promote certainty at all levels of the government and the economy for as long as necessary. Basically, they wanted it to go retroactive, just like the senators did, back to March. So here we are in July, that you would get checks from March forward with $2,000 a month. Sounds great. I think it sounds great. I think if we can spend billions on PPP loans, we can hand out billions to dead people. We can have $900 billion a year defense budget, making bombers and aircrafts to blow up people on, blow up one terrorist on a camel in Afghanistan. We can take care of our American citizens by getting them a direct payment to help them through this period. Absolutely, I agree with it. I agree with those economists. Is it going to happen? No, it's not going to happen. The OECD had recommended it. You have even the Federal Reserve talking about direct regular payments. You heard Fed Chair Jerome Powell mention this. Has there been any movement, any discussion from senators on this? Absolutely not. Even the HEROES Act that was passed by Nancy Pelosi and the House Democrats that went to the Senate floor to die, that was considered dead on arrival, and that was far less than $2,000 per month. In fact, Nancy Pelosi even mentioned, rather than having multiple stimulus amounts in her HEROES Act, they dialed it back to one stimulus payment again, because if they went any higher than that, they knew Republicans wouldn't go for it, and it would have been too large. So they went backwards. That's from Democrats saying that. So this thing was dead on arrival. Maybe it makes good headlines, it makes good PR, but there's a nasty rumor floating around out there, and I know that people see these headlines. I don't want you to be, scammed by them or bought into them. So I see these Forbes articles that make that claim in the headline, and then they go through and they provide about 4 or 5 or 6 paragraphs of history about the HEROES Act. They provide like 4 or 5 paragraphs about the history of the CARES Act. And then there's one little paragraph where they mention this open letter from the OECD, these economists writing an open letter. I could write an open letter. I'll have my kids write an open letter later today in crayon. and send it to Washington. Does that mean we're getting $2,000? You know what I'll tell you? I'm going to have my son Miles write a letter in crayon to Washington calling for $2,000 a month in stimulus payments. And then guess what tomorrow will happen? Forbes will write an article that says 9-year-old could push Congress for $2,000 a month in stimulus payments. And then when we dig into the article, you'll find out that it's a 9-year-old who wrote a letter in crayon to Congress calling for $2,000 a month. So there is no $2,000 a month. I wish there was. A number of smart people, Andrew Yang and others, and frankly, Jerome Powell has called for direct payments. He believes that this is a way to stabilize our economy long term instead of just like one little payment to people. What we are likely to see, though, folks, is what I've been saying. Senator Barrasso and others who've been calling for, targeted payments to the American people that would be much smaller than we wanted before. Here's Senator John Barrasso answering this question to Maria Bartiromo on yesterday. What will be in this next CARES Act that is passed in the next few weeks? See if you hear that there's $2,000 a month in payments in here. Keep your ears peeled for this. See if you hear it.
The next part of the CARES Act, another stimulus plan.
Yeah, there's a consensus. We need to do another bill. That'll be in the next couple of weeks. And let me just tell you what I believe needs to be in it. And I think your viewers will agree. Number one, it has to focus on getting people back to work and children back in school. Number two, it has to focus on saving lives. And to me, that means more testing, better treatment, and then, of course, a vaccine. And finally, we need to provide the liability insurance for our healthcare workers, for our mom and pop small businesses, and for our schools so they can all open in a good way. Now, the Democrats have a proposal already. They passed it a month or so ago, and it's Nancy Pelosi living in handout heaven. It's direct checks to illegal immigrants. It's bailouts to big city and state pension plans that are run by Democrats. We're not going to do that. The focus of this bill has to be getting people back to work and paychecks back into their pockets.
I didn't hear $2,000 a month. I didn't hear it, Forbes.com. So stop with these like garbage articles that are sort of playing on people's anxieties. Let me just bottom line this for you. Here's what we know today. Mitch McConnell wants a maximum of $1 trillion for the next round of stimulus. That's where it's likely to sit. Some estimates have it at about 1.3 in early negotiations. And according to sources I'm hearing from, that's where it's going to sit, somewhere in that $1.3 trillion range. And much will change over the next few weeks. We'll see if Democrats are able to get more things in this for landlords and renters. But what we know right now is about that much. We also know that it's going to be targeted and likely below $40,000. $40,000 a year is the opening negotiation for adjusted gross income. If you make more than that, it will likely be tiered after that. But right now, it looks like the starting negotiations, according to the White House and according to Senator Mitch McConnell's office, is $40,000 adjusted gross income. Targeted for the hospitality, maybe restaurant employees, those that were hardest hit, who were basically shut down and forced to stay home. And they want a back to work incentive to get back to work. Unemployment benefits would also be capped at 100% of what you were making, not beyond that, where people were making 120, 130% of what they would take home. And that's frankly it right now. And liability protection. Those are the main pieces along with that payroll tax cut that the president wants. Liability protection for businesses and payroll tax cuts for people making a paycheck. That's what we know right now. And we know that Larry Kudlow has said that these checks will be less than $1,200. In fact, I'll quote him, Larry Kudlow, in an interview with Reuters this weekend, saying that these checks, these direct payments, would be smaller than $1,200. And they would be targeted to lower income individuals, people without jobs. So people without jobs would get these checks. People with jobs would see a payroll tax decrease. So their checks would go up about 7%. People without jobs would get another round of stimulus, likely if they're making under $40,000, and they're in certain business sectors. We don't know the full list of that yet. And again, Democrats are likely to push back on this, so we'll see how this all shakes out. He says, this kind of economic assistance will probably be very carefully targeted. It's not going to be across the board, so you're not going to wake up one morning with a check in your pocket randomly from the federal government again. So that, my friends, is the very latest on the stimulus. Please support our sponsor of our show, Webull. You get 2 free stocks just for opening an account with them and depositing $100 into your account. 2 free stocks valued up to $1,400. The link is below. You need to use that link in order to get those free stocks. So our thanks to Webull for supporting the show, and my thanks to you for always being a subscriber to this show and joining our channel memberships as well. Much love to all of you. I thank you for that. And Grover thanks you as well, don't you, buddy? He's the best co-host in the world.